let's talk about the title and why you chose that title. It's obvious that you've bled blue throughout your career as well as this gentleman here, but talk about the book and the title and why you chose the title of the book.
Well, the bulk of my career has played 13 of the 15 years was played here in Toronto, and once you've played here, when Dougie came in, we had a little bit success and had some runs, and all of a sudden we pretty much have a tattoo glued to our ass. So it's one of those things that you never forget, and it's because of Toronto Nation and what we have here in Toronto, the fans we have that make us, we all bleed blue. We all believe in the blue and white.
It's called Bleeding Blue, if you guys want to pick it up. It just came out this past week. And Doug, Bleeding Blue, the time that I met you, when you got traded here in that deal that Cliff made with Calgary, and we became friends, and I got to know you and your personality, and your nickname's Killer, but people don't know the other side, or they've got to know because you're a funny guy. But talk about your version of Bleeding Blue and coming to Toronto, and back then your memories of it.
Well, I can honestly tell you, growing up in Kingston, Ontario was pretty special, and my brother, he played in London Knights with Daryl Sittler and Dan Maloney, so I had a little history in Toronto. And Wendal and I played, we were in training camp together in '87 Canada Cup, and when Wendal didn't make the team, his hockey pants were signed "Best Wishes, Claude Lemieux." So that was actually...
He hasn't admitted to it yet,
Somebody did it. It was Kirk Muller, Dale Howard, Chuck Arai. So for me, having the opportunity to be a part of this, and as the true captain of our hockey club, I'll just tell you a little bit about Wendal here. In the '94 playoffs, we're playing against Vancouver, and Gino Ojek was all over me every shift. So Wendal, all he did was went up to Pavel Bure and said, "Hey, tell Gino to leave Gilmore alone or I'm going to fucking kill you." Gino left me alone. Excuse my language.
It's hard to believe that. It's hard to believe that Wendal swore, but I can kind of see it happening. So, Doug, back then in that era, hockey's changed a lot. We know it's become a bigger game, but it's still Canada's game, and it's become a game that younger men have come into the league now. You see the Connor McDavids, the Austin Matthews, guys get success quicker. I'll get Wendal to answer this as well, but when you were playing junior hockey, and a guy that was you always had the odds stacked against you throughout your career. You were a smaller player. You were a guy that in junior you did well, but when you came into the NHL, you weren't a guy that was projected to be a superstar. You had to work for everything. Talk about that.
Well, again, I got drafted, same as Wendal. I was drafted to junior as a defenseman, and I went into camp. I jumped on the scale, and I was 5'9", $140. So they said, by the way, you're a centerman now. So obviously it challenged it. My first year in the OHL, we won the Memorial Cup, and I never got drafted that year. That was my draft year. And then the next year, my draft year, and they come in and weigh you. I don't eat a lot to start with, but I had, in those days you could jump on the scale with your jock on and stuff. I got quarters in my jock. Anything I could do to get heavier.
They didn't have the loony yet, which is a bummer. It would have worked way more in his favor.
So I went through that year, and I had a pretty good year, and I got drafted in the 7th round of St. Louis. So same thing. They always said I was too small and I couldn't do it, and thank God they kept saying that, because I just had to keep proving them wrong.
So, Wendal, for you in junior, talk about your career and going through the same process that Doug just described and how you came up.
Well, I played defense my whole life. Started out as a kid right through World Juniors. My draft year, I was a defenseman, and then in World Juniors, in order to make the team, they said, can you play defense and or forward? And I could care less as long as I wasn't going home to Saskatoon and I was going with the team. So that's where I played my first 3 games. Forward was at World Juniors in Finland, and then I went back to Saskatoon, played defense the rest of the year, and then after I got drafted to the Leafs, I got to the first day of training camp, went down the list, your names are on doors, which team you're on, and it had me left wing, playing with Russ Courtnall and Gary Leibman. That was how I was told that I was a winger, not a defenseman. So the Toronto Maple Leafs scouted me on the 3 games I played World Juniors.
Okay, so you go to training camp, and it was during an era of the Toronto Maple Leafs that was incredibly colorful. The owner was a gentleman by the name of Harold Ballard. I know there's some older people here who might remember him and young people who maybe don't, but talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs and walking into camp. Are you going to say something, Doug?
You got to ask Wendal a story about Harold Ballard's dog, team pitcher.
All right, tell us the team picture.
Dog,
You have the dog story first.
Harold had a dog named Puck, a big white Bouvier that was about 150 pounds. And he
used to be a defenseman.
He was the toughest guy because he had to sit in the middle of the picture on the ice. No rug. Male dog.
How many of you guys ever had to do that?
Something just sitting on the ice, and he would get mad at the dog when he would fidget. And so this dog always had, if you look back at team pictures, always a big white Bouvier Puck in the pictures. And so that whole 80s, like Gary Leibman was the defenseman of the year in the Western Hockey League.
Hang on a second here. He hadn't finished the story. They had to bring water out, put it on the ice to get the dog's things off the ice.
It's kind of like sticking your tongue on a pole, but not quite.
I'm leaving it to Doug to go R-rated for the whole show. We're good. But yeah, so we had a whole group of defensemen that they had drafted, moved to forward, because in the draft you kind of take the best player who you think, and then they kept moving guys to forward because they had a really group of talented guys, and that's when we actually played Dougie in the my first or second year. Was it 87 or 86? 87. When did you guys lose to Montreal? 86. No, first year you guys beat it. You were still in that. Dougie, actually, this is when you like the game or love the game. Dougie's one of those players that loves the game. I explain this when I talk to people that Dougie grows up a superstar playing junior with hundreds of points, right? And then in order to make the NHL, he's got to be the checking center behind Bernie Federko and be the defensive guy. So there's a guy that learns to adapt his game, change his game to get his game in the NHL. Then by the time he goes to Calgary and then to us, he's our superstar forward. But it didn't just happen. It just didn't happen his first year. He had to go the process of work his way through it, and that's when a lot of guys are trying to make it at the highest level and they think, well, I just want to play this way. Where a lot of the best players, they have to adapt for a while before they can get to that. And that's, in the simple terms, I say you either like it or you love it. And guys like Dougie, they love the game because, hey, I'll adapt my game to get there. Then once I've got there, I get my foot in the door, and then I become the next stage. And that's how Dougie started his career, is high points guy, and then a defensive checking guy, and then high points guy again.
I had 177 points my last year junior, and I didn't have a contract. And so I went over to Dusseldorf. I was in Germany in August for 2 weeks. I was almost going to sign there, and then St. Louis got a new ownership, the Harry Arness Group, and Jacques Demers was our coach, and Jacques said to me, can you check? And okay, so my signing bonus is $10,000. My contract was 65 pro, 25 minors, and a one-way contractor after 40 games. So when a coach says, can you check? I'm fucking checking.
By the way, that was the same amount of money the Leafs are going to spend on their rookie dinner this year, okay? Just so you know. All right.